It's not really that big of a deal. Well, I mean, obviously it's a big deal if you're one of those trafficked, but
consensual sex, I'll put that qualifier on it. Consensual sex and morality have really nothing to do with one another.
But there's still this kind of culture that we have, at least I can speak to this country, this kind of prevalent Puritanism, I guess, that's lingering from a long time ago.
I hope they don't like name the desire to rape because prostitution isn't legal the Rochford effect or anything.
Say you're a client and you're a complete dick, well, you're not going to get any prostitutes coming to you. Okay, welcome to another Kitchen Sink Microscopy. Oh yeah. So, Casey, what you have any topics of discussion for us today?
I saw something interesting in the news the other day. Maybe it was about a week ago. In Seattle, there was a huge simultaneous takedown of a bunch of massage parlors where,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was coughing. Go ahead and say that again.
There was a huge simultaneous takedown of a bunch of massage parlors where there was suspected prostitution activity and human trafficking going on. And I forget exactly how many they took down, but it was enough that they roped in through, I guess what you would call a civil asset seizure or whatever.
Forfeiture.
Yeah, for hundreds of thousands of dollars. A staggering amount of cash. They were, just like the gist of the article, they were tailing suspicious vans of these Asian gentlemen coming and going from the airport and stuff. And they ended up taking into custody the workers just to question them and see if they were in any danger and stuff. And sure enough, some of them were. There was definitely a trafficking operation going on there. And it might just be interesting to talk about the criminalization of sex, prostitution being illegal. Like it seems a little silly, and it's similar to another episode we did about the drug war and prohibition in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they tie in nicely, actually. I did hear about that, and I think that as far as prostitution goes, a lot of this the enforcement is justified on the basis that there's a whole bunch of trafficking, sex trafficking, or child sex trafficking, or something going on. Which
that stuff I'm on board with, absolutely.
Sure.
It's when they arrest the Johns for just wanting to have sex, consensually.
No. Well, it's important to note that for, at least from the information I've seen, that trafficking is really kind of a tiny proportion of all prostitution. It's not really that big of a deal. Well, I mean, obviously it's a big deal if you're one of those trafficked, but statistically, it doesn't constitute that much of all sex work like that.
Yeah, and I guess the biggest issue there is, like, how would you really know who's been trafficked and who hasn't? And if that were the case, where they were trafficked, is it really consensual sex on their part?
No, it wouldn't be if there was some kind of compulsion or coercion going on. Definitely not. But if it's voluntary, this is something I can never really wrap my head around. If it's a voluntary transaction between adults, consenting adults, somebody wants to have sex and the other person wants money, and they make an exchange, and everybody walks away content, where's the harm?
There is none.
Yeah, I really can't see it unless you have some moral objection, but then you're kind of thrusting your morality on other people at that point.
Exactly. I come from the stance that consensual sex, I'll put that qualifier on it, consensual sex and morality have really nothing to do with one another. Morality
I agree.
is more about, like, and I go into a lot of detail in this in the book I wrote, but there's really no right or wrong when it comes to two people consenting to do the same thing, especially a biologically necessary function of human beings, well, of all animals, really.
Absolutely. I mean, sex, the desire to have sex, to procreate, really is where that comes from. But the desire to have sex is every bit as fundamental as the desire to eat or take shelter or whatever. It's necessary to live. It's part of our genetics that we're compelled to do that. And I don't really. Maybe some of this comes from the I guess popular notion that sex is somehow bad.
Yeah, that's certainly like a very America thing, I think.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, it certainly exists in other cultures, but it's there's a lot looser attitudes about it in Europe for the most part. I think there's like breasts on billboards in Germany or something, like things like that you would never see in America, because it's just a part of the body. There's nothing inherently sexual about breasts.
Sure. Well, and there shouldn't be anything harmful in sex in general. I
Right.
don't understand.
Yeah, no,
that would be, if there are people who disagree on that and have something to say, I think we should talk to them, because I'd be really curious to see where they're coming from about in that way.
Yeah, I agree. It would be interesting to hear someone's position on how they feel morality applies to sex.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suspect a large deal of that is going to come from religion.
It might, but there's still this kind of culture that we have. At least I can speak to this country. This kind of prevalent Puritanism, I guess, that's lingering from a long, long time ago. And even people that aren't religious still seem to think that sex is dirty. A lot of people, I guess.
Yeah. The reason I say it's largely religious is that's a lot of the end of the ball field you see these things coming from is, like, well, the Bible says that fornication is a sin, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. It's
even though Jesus hung out with prostitutes.
What's that?
Even though Jesus hung out with prostitutes.
Yeah. It's kind of funny.
Was he a client? The world may never know.
The classic example of cherry picking in the Bible, but anyway, that could be a whole that could be a whole topic.
Oh yeah. Let's go back to kind of deviate a little bit. Let's go back to the idea of prohibiting prostitution, the business of trading sex for money.
Mm-hmm.
The justifications for it, and why it's illegal.
Yeah, like I think much like drug prohibition, it's creating problems that we are put into this vicious cycle for. Like, it's creating an open door for human trafficking. Not that it's the only way that this happens, but it's certainly one of the easier ones right now.
Well, sure, and the same thing with drug prohibition. The market's so huge. There's so much money to be made. and all of it's underground. Aside from a couple of states that have some measure of legal prostitution, most of it's underground.
Like
and
Las Vegas, I believe.
Yeah, or the outskirts of Las Vegas. The thing is that that entire system is completely unseen and hidden, and so of course it encourages those sorts of things, and it supports that sort of trade. I think if it were legal, you would see very, very little human trafficking. But if you did see it, it would be very, very easy to spot.
Yeah, and I think it's also creating, well, not creating, contributing to making an existing problem worse, and that is rape. And
sure, mm-hmm.
I think there's definitely a lot of people that feel like stifled, like it's wrong to go to a prostitute, but I'm not getting laid, and there's this desperation, and not in any way justifying their decisions, but I can see how that might drive someone to conclude that the only way they have of getting sex is by taking it by force. And if there were loss of the stigma and a legalization of it, they could just be like, well, I really don't, on a fundamental level, I don't want to hurt anyone. I'm just going to go get a prostitute. And I think in many cases, certainly there's exceptions, but I think in many cases that would probably lower the incidences of rape.
I absolutely, it certainly would.
Yeah, and that's mostly a hypothesis, but it's feasible, I think.
No, I think it's a really valid point that hasn't really, in fact, I don't think I've heard anybody bring that up before, so kudos. Nice.
I hope they don't like name the desire to rape because prostitution isn't legal the Rochford effect or anything. Please don't do that.
Oh, it's another case of prohibition not working, as with many things, and it doesn't really serve the public, I think, to just put people in jail for things like that, for things that they just naturally want to do. I mean, I think we've talked about it before, the comparisons to other businesses or other actions of the things that people engage in.
Yeah, and there's other stigmas that surround sex that have another effect on people. Like, say you're a John and you land in jail for prostitution, you face this kind of humiliation because it's seen as like beneath a cultured person to go pay for sex. But like, why should it be considered beneath us?
Good point.
Legal to sell things and it's legal to have sex, but it's illegal to sell sex.
Yeah, that's a pretty concise explanation. Yeah, and there's other situations like massage, the non-prostitution massage, where you can make physical contact with people very intimately. Really, you may be naked and somebody's rubbing their hands all over your oiled body, and that's perfectly fine to pay for that. But as soon as there's penetration involved, all of a sudden it's crossed some kind of arbitrary moral boundary and it's completely wrong. And now the state steps in and they can put you in a cage for it. I think really, I'm actually kind of shocked that we haven't legalized prostitution at this point.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the morality thing. For whatever reason, morality, whether based on religion or not, has crept into legislature, and morality is not objective in any way.
No.
It's very much a personal set of values that you apply to your social interactions, and we all come to these conclusions independently.
Sure.
Whether or not we like to attribute it to being raised in a religious household or whatever. I mean, there's been studies shown that morality does in fact exist in the animal kingdom, and clearly they probably don't have religion.
Probably not.
I say clearly, but I don't know what an animal. I don't know if a gorilla has a gorilla Jesus or.
Gorilla Jesus. That is an awesome name for a band. Oh, yeah, and I wonder too, the prohibition and the enforcement of these kinds of laws, how do they serve society? What are we gaining from putting people in jail for simply wanting to have sex or wanting to sell sex, whatever the case may be? Where's the benefit to society in that? I mean, it costs us money every time we do that.
Yeah, crowded prisons are the benefit. Everybody wants that, right?
Sure. Why not? We have more people in prison than anybody else. Why not add a few more?
Yeah, it opens up housing for other people that we're having a hard time finding an apartment, and oh look, that guy went to jail for having sex. Now I can take his house. All right.
I'm convinced.
Well, there we go. That's the reason it's been illegal all this time.
Yeah.
Housing market. All right.
But I would really like to get some input from people who feel otherwise, because it sounds like we pretty much agree on this particular topic. But I would definitely encourage people who feel otherwise to comment or get a hold of us and maybe participate in a discussion, because I would really like to know where they're coming from there.
Yeah, I think it would also be really interesting to hear the point of view of a prostitute. We may just need to interview them audio only by phone or something, just to protect them from, since it is still an illegal situation, we don't necessarily want to get anyone in trouble. But
sure.
Hear what their take is on it, and if they feel like
maybe if they feel like
from that particular line of work,
Sure. And I'd also like to hear whether they feel like they're being taken advantage of, or if they're just a business person.
Yeah.
Like a contractor or something.
I will say there's probably some non-consensual stuff that happens, because it is like, going beyond the fact that it's illegal right now and very underground, it's also behind a closed door, and it would probably be behind a closed door whether it's legal or illegal. But that's a girl consenting to take money for sex may not want certain acts to be done, and they might be doing those acts anyway by force, which removes the consensual aspect of it. And that's an important idea to take into it. Like, if it were legalized, how do we prevent that without invading privacy?
We would do it the same way we do with any other business. There's processes to handle those things, but when it's illegal and underground and unseen, there is no process. You have no legal recourse. I mean, imagine, how would you go to the police saying, oh, I'm a prostitute and I visited a client and performed sex acts and they did things I didn't want to do and forced themselves on me? Well, now you're coming initially as a criminal. But if it were legal, then it would be completely different. It'd be the same thing as somebody in any line of work where somebody does something they didn't want done.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about that, though. Even putting aside the fact that you might get clemency for the fact that one is far worse than the other, if, let's say, it was legal and you were raped in your line of work, you still got raped. Going and getting help for it after the fact isn't really much consolation, there would really need to be something in place to prevent it from happening at whatever level we're able to do so, of course.
Sure. Well, maybe we could investigate how they do it in the regions where it is legal, whether it be certain states or certain countries. I wonder how they handle that and what the numbers are on, if we compare an illegal situation and the number of rapes or forced sort of situations or acts against the places where it's legal. I'd be curious, does it increase or decrease?
Yeah. There's certainly ideas just coming off the top of my head, like you could have a panic button in the room or something. If a guy is getting out of hand, hit the button, bouncer comes in, maybe that would help.
Yeah, and I think in the case of escorts, where there's a driver that drops somebody off, they're kind of in contact with them, and they also act as a form of security. So if something goes awry, they can respond in some way. So the same sort of situation could work if it were legal too. If somebody went to your house.
Yeah. There might be like an Uber app for sex then, like.
Well, in fact, yeah, no, you're right. That actually is a really good point. The idea that you'd have reviews of customers and the prostitutes, everybody would get an opportunity to say how the experience was, and if you have enough bad reviews, well, you're not going to get any business. Or say you're a client and you're a complete dick. Well, you're not going to get any prostitutes coming to you.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty excellent idea. And let's go on record that it was our idea.
Yes, it started here first on Kitchen Sink Microscopy. Yeah, there's a multitude of different ways of handling those situations, and I think we can imagine how it would work right now, but without it being legal, there's probably people will dream up solutions to things. If there's a problem, somebody will come up with a solution.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of what we did. We could go on about it, but I think we pretty much agree. So I think the point here is to encourage people to contact us or start a conversation, and we would certainly welcome different viewpoints and an interview possibly.
Yeah. Hey, I just got a name for the app. Hooker. Oh boy. Too similar? Might be some lawsuits or this or that.
Nice. Well, I think that's just about all the time we have today for this particular topic. So, yeah.
So questions and comments are always encouraged. This is definitely something that we would love to hear your input on, because we do kind of agree on this one, and we need a little pushback. So
yeah,
thanks for deep sink diving with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Have a great day.